Who's on the Mount Rushmore of all-time overhyped athletes? Now,
are we building one for the show? Because I only selected one, Kevin.
You can pick 4. That's
okay,
how
I'll
Mount
pick 4
Rushmore
then.
works.
I'll pick 4.
So basically,
there's enough mountain to put another person up there.
Okay.
They
just have to get a person to. I guess the water runs over and it just randomly becomes a person.
No, that is
like, wow, those are 4 presidents the water made.
Definitely
evolution.
That's definitely not what happened.
No,
but I saw this on.
I thought all this Law and Order came through like science.
No, it was chiseled by people. Awful Announcing kind of started this conversation, and they threw out their 4, and I can tell you their 4. We can just skip right into our group of players. I have a couple of honorable mentions, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to stick with the 4. And go ahead and give me cut number 8 if you can, because this is another one that I think is a very logical selection.
Lead pass, Mwanga thinking about it, leads it. What do you do? He's going to shoot it. He does. He scores 4-2.
Now, my Mount Rushmore of all-time overhyped athletes, and you'll notice this is like during when I was alive and watching sports. So there might be people like, oh, what about Joe Namath or I don't know, whatever. And like I didn't pick anybody from that time. So my 4 are Todd Van Poppel, Freddie Adu, Brian Bosworth, and Danica Patrick. So Todd Van Poppel, it just felt like the hype behind him, maybe it's because he was from Texas, or I was really getting into cards at the time, was that he was going to be freaking amazing and like be the next Nolan Ryan and everything. And
first ever millionaire out of the draft.
Yeah, and it didn't work out at all. Freddie Adu, we've talked about it. He was going to make soccer popular in the United States. And then
at least Todd Van Poppel pitched in the major leagues. Freddie Adu didn't even play real soccer.
And because he wasn't really that great. He was really good at a young age, but he never got to like be as good as everybody thought. Brian Bosworth, I mean, look, everybody knew the boss coming out of college, the boss. And then, like, what was he done in 2 years? And then Danica Patrick I threw on there. Now, she did race, and she had her moments where she had nice finishes and stuff, but it felt like people were like, hold on, she's a lady, and she's racing a car? This is crazy. Let's talk about it forever. Oh, is she any good? She's pretty. And you're like, hold on, that's not the question I asked.
Did she ever win anything?
I don't think she won like a real race.
Not in racing.
I'll go back and double check on that, but I feel like
won a pole.
There was so much freaking hype behind her. So the 4 that I'm going to go with, Danica Patrick, Brian Bosworth, Freddie Adu, and Todd Van Poppel. Now, we already had one suggestion off air that created a little bit of controversy, and it was Mr. Image is Everything, Andre Agassi. Now,
man.
We had this discussion.
I remember his match with Pete Sampras that lasted like 15 hours. That was amazing.
I personally, I'm sorry, Eric, I do not think that Andre Agassi is overrated because he won 8 Grand Slams. Now, some of them, hold on, some of them came after he lost his hair, but not all of them. He did win a couple of
Maybe
Grand
Trevor Lawrence
Slams.
should look at Andre Agassi and figure something out.
He won a couple of Grand Slams and got up to number 1, I guess 3, when he really had his hair. And then he kind of disappeared for a while. And then he came back and was really good all of a sudden again. Yeah. Like after like 4 years, he's like, I got rid of my hair. I don't think I'm with Brooke Shields anymore. And I'm going to start winning majors again.
Steffi Graf turned him around.
Yeah, I don't know when they got together, but maybe that is what happened.
You have yours, or
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I don't even know if there's any highlights or not, but I thought this was.
Well, let me ask you this, Mike. Did you tell Alec that you wanted it?
I have one highlight.
I did, but I changed a few.
Okay.
Because I decided to do this. Number 1,
it up.
Danny Ferry.
Cut number 9.
Draws a double team. Here's Ferry for 3. Danny Ferry.
That sounded nice, though.
So Danny Ferry was the consensus best player in college basketball. He was the next Larry Bird. So as Larry Bird started having back issues, people are going to forget this if they're not old enough. Danny Ferry was the way we're talking about Cooper Flagg. Now, I know he's a freshman. And back then, back in the late 80s, you would go to school for at least 3 years, if not 4. Danny Ferry was going to be the next greatest basketball player in the history of basketball. And then the Clippers had the number 1 overall pick, and he said, I'm not going to the Clippers. So he went overseas to play basketball. He hated the Clippers so much.
Did they take Danny Manning? Was that year?
No. They ended up having to trade him, I believe, to Cleveland.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And so he ends up going to Cleveland, and it's like, here he comes. He's the next this and that, college player of the year. He's going to be Larry Bird. And he was just like, he was an average player at best.
Okay, I like that one. I'm going to guess and play cut number 10 that this fella makes his way onto your list.
James, guarded by Tyson, steps back, and Bronny James has his first points in the NBA.
Bronny James. What a joke.
Nobody's hyping him. They know
his dad
what he
hyped
is.
him up for 5 years.
They know.
By the way,
I'm going to play with my
what he
son in the
is.
NBA, and they just made it happen. Like, yeah, he's not even close to an NBA player, but here he is. Deal with it, Griffies.
What they're doing with him on the G League now?
What are they doing? Is he turning into a coach? Because that's a better career for him.
No, but they're like, hey, you can play the home games. We're not going to make you get on the plane and
joke.
go play away games.
This is amazing.
What?
Yes.
This is amazing,
His
isn't it?
expenses are too much.
Maybe. So he's on your list, I assume?
Yeah, like how he has – Corey, we've heard about this son for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't do anything in high school that was that important. He was nice. He goes to USC, and unfortunately he did have the heart situation.
Yeah.
But he was not a good college basketball player. He was a below-average freshman college basketball player on a D1 level, and now he's in the NBA.
Yeah.
Like, that's
And
way
calling
over.
his shots. Calling his shots in
Yeah,
the G League.
yeah, and in the G League, he's like, I'm not traveling. All right, fine, whatever. All right, so then my next two, just to have fun, is Christian Laettner and Jay Williams. So I just
what the hell? Are you just picking all Duke players?
Well, Christian Laettner was he did make an all, like, he was way better than Danny Ferry.
He was on Team USA.
Yeah.
Over Shaq.
I know. Look, I will fight for that to the death, that at the time he was the best player in college basketball. You can look back on it and be like, that was really stupid.
How much playing time was Shaq really getting on that?
Yeah, that's fair. And
They
Chris,
had Patrick Ewing and David Robertson.
Yeah, they were fine.
Sorry.
see, I thought you might throw out
And then I picked
Jurickson Profar.
The thing
with
is
the
I
sad
didn't pick.
face.
I just decided to pick basketball players. I had Felipe Lopez on there, which nobody's going to remember, but he was the number one
Is that the
player
St.
in
John's
New York.
kid?
Yeah,
Yes,
and then
I
he
do remember
sucked.
that.
He's my age. He's my class. So I was like, I remember playing basketball like Felipe Lopez, and then after watching him play at St. John's, like Felipe Lopez. He did make the NBA, but Jay Williams is not fair. I'm just going to be honest because he got hurt. I tried to not pick like Greg Oden was a huge bust, but Greg Oden's a huge bust because of injury. Because he was good in college, and you just don't know what he'd have been because of injury. So I tried to not pick injury because I was going to then pick Bobby Hurley, but today's National Seatbelt Day. If you'd like to know about wearing a seatbelt, ask Bobby Hurley.
That is fair. By the way, our buddy Ben is listening. He said Jurickson Profar. I think this is the part of the show where we say goodbye to Mike as they have delivered a tray of meatballs.
That is a lot of meatballs.
I just turned my mic off. Mic back on for 1 second.
Yeah.
I'm about to have some of the best meatballs ever.
From the 817, Dak Prescott, Rugnet Odor, Trevor Lawrence, and Deshaun Watson. From the 405, Sam Bradford, Cam Newton, Reggie Bush, and Ricky Williams. This one's funny. From the 469, Sebastian Telfair, Jamarcus Russell, Rocket Ishmael, and just for Kevin, Speedy Noyle. Man, Speedy Noyle was this player that came to A&M, and they seemed to think like they had just gotten the greatest football player that had ever lived, and that was going to change everything. And then, you know what? It didn't. Corey, what say you?
All right, for basketball. And I know the hype is different because it wasn't necessarily out of college. James Harden. I think James Harden was when he
interesting.
left Oklahoma City, it was like, oh man, he's going to go run Houston and they're going to be all amazing. And they played in the playoffs sometimes, and that was about it. He is a very skilled individual player. He is very skilled. He's not the best. He's not the best team guy. Even though he has lots of assists, the whole team doesn't do better because of him. But I always thought that he was just a little overhyped because he got involved in that conversation of is he the best. It's kind of a little bit of a fear with Luka. Was like, as good as he is, does it translate? Well, Luka's been to the finals. He's been to the Western Conference Finals. It's worked.
Okay.
Anna Kournikova.
Ooh, that's a good one.
She was gorgeous. Maybe she still is. I don't know. Let's go look.
Okay, well, can you look that up in a minute?
All right, fine. But Anna Kournikova, and it wasn't necessarily like, I don't know if anybody expected her to be a great tennis player.
I think,
but she
kinda.
was. Did they really? Okay, but it just seemed like she wasn't good. She wasn't as good as everybody was like, oh man, she's hot, and that was about it. Like That's where it started and that's where it finished. My number 3. Oh, did you want to talk about Kournikova?
No, I was just going to throw it out there. Do you know how many major finals she was ever in?
0.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
She made the semifinals of Wimbledon in 1997 and the quarterfinals of the Australian Open in 2001. Do you know how many career singles titles she has?
0.
That is also correct.
So that kind of
it's fair.
It tracks.
I think you make a fair point.
My number 3 person that I think is overhyped, Jadeveon Clowney. Now, Kevin.
Okay, I'll give you credit for that. I'll give. Let me present your argument on this if I can. Jadeveon Clowney had the tackle with South Carolina. Was it against Michigan?
It was Michigan.
When he broke the entire state of Michigan with the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. Everybody knew he was going to be the number 1 pick, and he just kind of quit. And then he got to the NFL, and Corey up and down was like, I don't think so. I'm not buying this guy. I'm not buying his work ethic. I don't think. You weren't like, he'll be out of the league in 2 years, but you're like, he is never going to be the dude.
He was never going to live up to the number 1 overall pick.
And he has not.
He's been serviceable at times as a defensive end.
I will give you credit for that, absolutely.
And then Alec has my audio for this one, but it's this is a guy that, look, maybe the hype's deserved.
Oh, you might get Mike to turn his mic back on.
I'm just not a huge – I just was – I always thought Michael Young was just as good. This guy right here.
And the 2-0. There it is. For 72 years, Lou Gehrig has been the Yankees' all-time hits leader. Now it's Derek Jeter.
Oh, he hit one to right field again. Oh,
I really
job.
thought you were going to play like a strikeout of Derek Jeter or something like that.
He hit one to right field. That's what Jeter does. He was really good at being in the best lineup in all of baseball history. Just being like, you know what, I'm really benefiting. He's like Najee Marshall. He's all right, and then he benefited from being surrounded by the best hitters that you could possibly buy. And he was always at the plate whenever the big moment shone. And because he was wearing a Yankees hat, every pitcher was scared of him. And so he was like, yeah, I guess I'll get a hit in this big moment. I think that Michael Young could have been in that lineup and done some amazing things also.
Okay, Corey.
And Michael Young doesn't get enough credit for how great he was.
I do agree. I want to make clear that this is from the 806, not me.
And I know Chris Woodward told me that I was a dummy for that, but I'm okay with it.
And he even told us about that one time he was on Degrassi.
Yeah.
So from the 806, Mount Rushmore of overhyped athletes, Lynn Swann, Derek Jeter, Joe Namath, and Bo Jackson. Now, I want to make this clear. That is not my Mount Rushmore, but here it is. From the 940, Jake Paul, Ryan Leaf, Dak, and Darius Miles. Man, I haven't thought about Darius Miles in a while.
Was he in the movie?
Yes. Was he in The Perfect Score?
Yes.
Something along those lines. From the 682.
Only want to be with you.
That is Darius Rucker. Trevor Lawrence. And at this point, I see it. I just don't think, and it could be a product of like age and how much media we get now. Because for me, Todd Van Poppel and Brian Bosworth were both at a place where, we still didn't have all the TV channels, obviously no internet. I felt like I heard about them all the time nonstop, and then they weren't really that good. Freddie Adu, like I said, he was going to single-handedly change soccer here in the United States, and that didn't happen. Then Danica Patrick, you heard every time she did anything, it was big news, big news. She is kind of the equivalent, I think, to a certain extent of Anna Kournikova. And so I like that answer, and that's why I went with those. All right, I'm going to get to more of your fan text, but Alec, I wanted to give you a shot at this as well if you want.
So I'm going to build up to my cut here. I'm going with people that I grew up watching. I'm a lot younger. I could go full revisionist history, but people I actually saw in person or just growing up. Jerkson Profar makes the list. Le'Veon Bell is one for me. I feel like he did a lot of things that a lot of people did, but he just got a bigger spotlight because he was on winning teams. Sam Bradford, as much as I wanted him to succeed, obviously it's kind of not fair because of injuries and everything, but still.
I warned you about that guy too, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think there was a lot of moments that he could have really established himself as something special, but he just didn't capitalize when he was healthy. And then number one, outside of 2015, I don't really remember anything memorable about this guy.
They've only allowed one today on Bortles, who fires, and it's intercepted. Josh Norman has a Panther pick six. Touchdown, Carolina.
I like to joke that Justin Herbert is like the best quarterback of all time in made-up scenarios, and in the same like weird way, Josh Norman is the best corner ever in scenarios where he can just get people to like want to fight him. When he can get in their head, like OBJ. Against OBJ, that's prime time. That is awesome. But outside of that, it seemed like if he couldn't get in their head, he didn't really do anything amazing.
Now,
Bortles was also overrated.
This is also true.
I love that clip because I was like, is he going to say Blake
two
Bortles
overrated
or
guys.
Josh Norman? From the 469, Ronda Rousey. From the 214, Ronda Rousey. I love to hear it. I'm totally with you on that. Harold Miner, Jeremy Lin. Jamarcus Russell has come up a few times, as has Zion. And Zion is going to be another one that, I mean, remember, I know he wasn't the president at the time, but President Obama was like, I got to be here at this Duke, North Carolina game because Zion was like the biggest thing in the world. And then when he blew out his shoe in like 45 seconds, everyone was just like, I don't care anymore. So like he was a humongous deal, and obviously with injury concerns, he looks like he could be a damn good player, but he's struggled. Here's one we haven't really talked about.
By the way, Kevin, Anna Kournikova.
Still pretty?
Still pretty.
Okay.
Still.
Tim Tebow. What do we think about Tim Tebow being on the list? Because he was, again, kind of like Bosworth. He was outstanding in college.
Yeah, but everybody knew, except for somehow the Broncos.
The Broncos.
Like, everybody knew in that draft, like, hey, third-round pick, we get it. Maybe greatest college quarterback of all time. You can argue greatest college football player of all time. But everybody scouting the draft was like, but there's not a lot here for NFL.
Yeah.
And then the Broncos
took him in the first round,
stupidly
right?
took him like in the late first round.
Yeah.
I was like, what is going on here? So then it did put him into this category because all it takes is one team to say you're a first rounder. As long as they take you, you're a first rounder.
From the 817, Mike Bassick, most overrated or overhyped.
I'm honest to God, maybe so.
It was from that guy right there.
I was awesome.
I
was awesome in high school.
Roddy B, Todd Marinovich. Oh, Darko Milicic. That is a good one. And then somebody said for their Mount Rushmore, it's just 4 pictures of Roddy B, and that's all it is.
Dude, him, yeah, and locally it's, him, Gallo, and Profar are definitely that trio. And
I mean, honestly, if you want to do this, even way more than Profar and Gallo is David Clyde. Before our time.
Yeah, that is before our time.
But he was considered, people today who are old will say, there's no human being they still seen in high school that was better than David Clyde.
And the weird thing is, I guess he can take some solace or credit in knowing that he essentially saved the Rangers being in Texas. Now, I realize that did no good for the rest of his career.
Look at who I had before I decided to go with Clowney, Kevin. Can you tell what that says?
I cannot read that.
It
I'm
says
sorry.
Romo.
Oh, my
Now,
gosh.
that would have been the hottest of hot takes.
That is a hot take.
But, I mean, think about it. Romo wasn't hyped coming out of college. But whenever he took the reins, it was a Monday Night Football game against the Giants. And he didn't have the greatest game, but from there on, he launched into a stratosphere that only a Cowboys quarterback can go into. And granted, he was a good quarterback throughout his career, but people were putting him up there with Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
People were putting him up there with all the great quarterbacks in the NFL, and he never quite lived up to it. And you can say, look, that's Jerry's fault. That's fine. That's perfectly okay. And maybe if he'd had better teams more often in his career, but I always felt like it was overhyped for him, even though he was a very good quarterback.